Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the EVI Women in STEM seminar series. Our guest speaker today is Cecilia Martinez-Gomez, who is an assistant professor here at Berkeley that specializes in bacterial metabolism. She has dedicated her work to improving agriculture and engineer industries, which in turn helps our environment. Hello, Cecilia. Thank you so much for meeting us today. Do you want to introduce yourself briefly?
Yeah. So again, my name is Cecilia Martinez-Gomez. I work here at Berkeley at the Department of Plant and Microbial Biology. I guess the research that I focus on really tackles the understanding of how environmental microbes, particularly bacteria, is able to use compounds that only have one carbon in its structure, and in the process use metals that are known to be really novel in terms of biological conversions. And we are focusing in that sense our basic research, but also we're trying to, with what we gather and the information that we gather, to really apply this knowledge to generate platforms that can help us with, the recycling industry and the agricultural industry.
Today, we're really going to try to understand the basics of the topics that Cecilia specializes in and how it can give an impact on energy or climate, but also we're going to touch on her career and how she has gotten this far. So first, we're going to start with some background on the science involved with your research. What is bacterial metabolism?
Yeah, so metabolism is the capacity of any organism to have chemical transformations. And within those chemical transformations, those organisms are able to gather everything that they need to grow, and also all the energy that is required for these processes. But I think that that's also just to see metabolism in a single layer kind of way. For us, we also see the multi-dimension perspective, which includes, okay, depending on how much food or what we call substrates are available, how does the cell decide to use one substrate versus the other one? In conditions of limitations, what are the different reactions that they have to do to then instead, for example, use a storage carbon that they had already gathered from other substrates or food? And also regulatory processes. So how do they decide to not keep eating food or substrates and just kind of rest these, go to a resting state, so where they can maybe preserve energy and survive?
So the purpose of bacterial metabolism is to have them to reproduce, or what is the purpose of
Yes. So the main purpose of metabolism in a cell is that they can grow and then divide. And then, the daughter cells have the capacity to also reproduce, and on and on and on.
How can your research help with environmental problems in terms of you're trying to get them to complete tasks, correct?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we focus on environmental bacteria, so environmental microbes that use a specific type of food. And these specific food are compounds that only have one carbon, but that they are also contributing to climate change. So we are talking about compounds like methane, which is a greenhouse gas, or toxic compounds like formaldehyde, which is it's a compound that is extremely reactive and can link with many different proteins and then not make them active anymore. So the way we contribute in that sense is because we are able to use to understand how microbes are able to use these very harmful compounds in nature that are exacerbating climate change. And that is just one aspect. The other aspect, which is also very cool, is that we learned that in order to use these one carbon compounds, bacteria has to get access to metals that are known as lanthanides. And so what that means is that these microbes have evolved for millions of years to be able to recover these metals from the environment. And it turns out that these metals are very, very important to develop all our technological gadgets. So The idea also in helping with climate change, or to try to solve some of our issues in terms of contamination, is that currently, in order to obtain those metals that we use in our phones, they're used for batteries, they're used for any kind of long-term battery, or planes, turbines in the planes. Right now, chemists are using very harsh acid conditions to be able to dissolve them and make them available and purify them. And when they're doing that, they're also contaminating our water streams. And those processes are very inefficient too. So we propose to use our bacteria that can do and recover these metals without melting things, exposing radioactive elements in our water streams, but just in a very specific way. That if we want to, recover those metals from mines, but we can also use our bacteria to recover those metals from electronic waste. So in a way, we're proposing to recover these metals from garbage, electronic garbage that we're generating, so that they can be reused and hopefully also lower the impact that is happening every time that we're renewing our technological gadgets.
Okay, so you want to cultivate, or you are cultivating bacteria so that we can get in a more sustainable and eco-friendly way these metals that we can reuse and kind of have like a circular economy, correct?
Correct, because we will feed them electronic garbage and feed them with a greenhouse gas.
Okay.
So we get rid of the greenhouse gas and we obtain a metal that can be reused to generate more technology.
And using bacteria is a fairly quick way to test things out, correct? Because it grows fairly quickly, I would
Correct.
assume. What would you say is the ultimate application for your research? Would you like to develop bacterial platforms to further the agriculture and energy industries and improve our environment, bioleaching?
Yeah, so we have different goals depending on what aspect of the research is leading us to. So I think that I will divide it in three main goals. The first goal is we want to generate a cell, a bacterial cell, that will allow us to recover these lanthanides, so these metals, in a very efficient way that is economically feasible by using greenhouse gases. That is one. The second one is we also want to, on the process, not only use the greenhouse gas and generate that metal, but also produce things of value, for example, bioplastics or antibiotics or biofuels, so that all the carbon that they're using from these greenhouse gases can also be used to produce something of value. The third goal that we have is, with all this cell mass that we are creating, we can also use those cells to feed the plants, because what we have found is that the bacteria itself can also make plants grow better. So also provide kind of a biofertilizer as an end product. So those would be our three goals.
It's extremely sustainable and very circular. I could see it all goes back to it. Perfect. Your research, is it fairly new? What would you say are some gaps and barriers that you have experienced in your development preventing your research to be put to use?
Yeah. So we are working in an extremely exciting area, but it's very recent. So it was only discovered 10 years ago that bacteria could use these metals in order to use these one carbon compounds. So of course, what that means is that really 10 years ago, nothing was known about it. From what are the proteins that are used in these metals? How is the microbe able to sense them, bring them in? Once they have them in the cell, how do they actually use it? So we have to start working from scratch without really knowing anything about how these metals work. And so that has been obviously more challenging, because these are not metals that necessarily behave like any of the metals that we know were involved in biology. But it's also very exciting because it has never been reported before. So it's just that. It's a little bit more challenging, but we're learning so much stuff
You mentioned it's very exciting. How would you encourage students to continue to study this specific field?
Yeah, well, I think just the notion that we are discovering something new should be very enticing for many students, right? But that happens with all research. I would argue that just because this field has really been unexplored and is easy to work with the model organisms that we're using and the techniques that we're using, it can also be very rewarding in a small amount of time. So that is also an incentive for many students. Um, so I would guess those two factors, and also people are paying attention because anything that can allow us to develop technology at a faster pace is of importance, not only for what it means at the level of basic research, but even for our nation. Our nation does not want to depend anymore that the supply of these metals is dependent on other countries.
Mhm.
So we can actually contribute to make something good domestically in a small amount of time. So that is also very exciting.
Next two questions are going to be about your career as a researcher, which I'm sure our audience is very curious about. What was the process like for you because you are a graduate from another country?
Mhm. Yeah, so I think, as I mentioned before, I started doing research since I was very young, 11, working just in different labs that were in the university, National University of Mexico. I'm from Mexico. And it's just because I live very close to the university and I knocked doors and I was like, I really want to help out. And there were researchers that helped me out even when I was so young. And they made their members explain to me their research projects in a way that I could understand. So I knew from very early on that I wanted to be a researcher and lead my laboratory. But I also saw that in Mexico, the amount or the number of female principal investigators is very low. And I thought that that was not good. Instead, I looked in the United States and I saw that that number was considerably higher.
I'm not sure if you know this, but only 2% of Latina women currently have an occupation in STEM. So
Yeah.
it's very admirable. I just want to know why you were interested in choosing this field.
Yeah, so I think it has really to do with the people that opened the door in their labs. So they were at the beginning, actually, the first three labs that I worked were women also that allow me, they were always explaining to me things in a way that I could understand. So I had a question about what we were doing, and they will have the patience to really explain to me how things work. That patience and that nurturing my curiosity is what really allowed me to just keep being interested in research. I feel that if we as researchers are very open to explain things without the jargon, so many more women in particular, like girls in particularly when we're growing up, would be less shy to ask questions. And once that happens, it's so easy to fall in love with science.
Lastly, what would be one piece of guidance you would want to tell your younger self and or the other young women in STEM that are looking to start their career?
Yeah, I would say that if you have an ink or curiosity for what the sciences are, to not be afraid to look for opportunities, including myself in this university, but I'm sure that in many different places, there are many different investigators that are so willing to talk to anyone that is interested, even if it's a very young age, and motivate you and provide the tools for any kid, girl, young person to look into what research means. So I would say be less afraid and pursue more that curiosity.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for such a great conversation. It's truly admirable to see women so accomplished like yourself and your career. You're a great example of what future women looking to enter the STEM field should be. And it inspires me personally as a Latina woman. It is very admirable to see that. I, alongside EBI, would like to thank you for your time and your wisdom. We look forward to seeing what comes next from you on your bacterias, and we wish you the best of luck in all your future endeavors.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this invitation.
Thank you all for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe, as well as click the bell to be notified for our next interview. Our socials are linked here as well as on our website. If you're interested in climate change, renewable energy, biosciences, and all that comes with that, and also looking to see what career path you would like to take if you're interested in that, we highly recommend checking our socials and website out.